Today I'm going to be tying one of my favorite summer smallmouth bass flies. So if you're a fly angler, you may or may not fish for bass. And if you do, you can fish it like you're a fly angler, which would be to throw some big bass poppers, and that always works great. And you can also strip some streamers and get some strikes that way. But if you really want to have some interesting summer fun, think like a bass angler. Bass anglers throw a lot of jigs in the rivers. The heavy head drop to the bottom, it sits and wiggles, they pick it up and it drops again. There's something about that smallmouth and largemouth bass in rivers just can't say no to. So this is my fly fishing fly to act just like a bass jig. I don't really have a name for it other than I call it the horseshoe jig, because you drop it in the water, it goes bam, and it always lands just like that, straight up. So you can see I have a horseshoe on the bottom, and I'll show you how to make that. And it's tied with squirrel zonker. It could resemble a crayfish or just really any fluffy thing. This one's tied in olive squirrel zonker, and you can see the strips are thin strips of olive zonker. So let's get started. I'm using, as I said, olive squirrel zonker, and the hair on the squirrel zonker is not as long as the hair on the rabbit. You can tie this with rabbit. It kind of turns into a big fur ball. So I kind of like the squirrel. All right, so to make the horseshoe, you're going to need some lead solder. I use the 50-50. It says it right there, 50-50. That means it's 50% lead and 50% tin. You can buy 60-40, but the 60-40 is 60% tin, 40% lead, which means it's a little lighter weight. And I want this to be heavier, so I'm going to use the 50-50. So pull some off of there, kind of straighten it out a little bit. Like that. All right. And then you need something to wrap it around to make a perfect horseshoe. I'm just going to use the handle on this dubbing rake. And then just bend it around it. Bend it until it looks like the two sides are even with each other. Maybe just a little bit there, about like that. And then you need to cut it off even. To cut it off nice and clean without a jagged end like the one you can see here, without that pointy end, you need some side snips that have a flat side, a genuinely flat side. Your normal wire cutter side snips actually still bevel in right at the blade, but you can buy these in the beading craft section at any store, Joann's, Michael's, you name it, Pat Catan's, they all have these. You find them over in the jewelry making section. So then what you do is you cut it off where you think looks nice and flat. Looks nice, like horseshoe size. There. You see I got a nice clean cut. And to cut the other side even, you just gauge these on there like this and go, okay, I want to cut right there. All right, now I have my horseshoe. So the hook I'm going to be using for this just happens to be the Mustad 3366 in a size 1. Just any kind of big bass hook would do a trick. That's the style of hook right there. Load that in my vise, keeping the point within because otherwise it'll catch on your thread. The next step is to make that horseshoe sit up just the way you want. This has to be on the bottom side of the hook or the back on an angle. You pick your own angle. How high do you want it to stick up? You know, I like about like that. You can just tie it in as is. However, I like to make it a little more secure and stable and point the right way. So what I've done is I bought a pair of these craft pliers and I ground them down so that they're super thin. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to envision, all right, I want that angle, so I'm going to come straight in on it. Make sure I'm in the middle. Like that, see? And I'm just going to give it a little crimp. Smush it a little bit. And you can see what that does is it gives you a little groove and a flat spot inside the groove about the same width as the hook where it can sit right there when you go to tie it. Again, it's not a necessary step, but it's something I do to get a good bite on it. to start the fly, you want to wrap some thread. I'm just going to wrap it about the first 1/4 inch or so. That's about it. Put a few wraps on. I'm using 6/0 olive uni thread. A little bit of a thread base going there. Okay, stop at about the middle of it, and then place your horseshoe right on the groove where you think you want it. You don't want it all the way up at the eye because we're going to finish tying off at the very front. You don't want it way back, or you're just wasting some hook. You're not really achieving anything by putting it further back. So just enough where you can tie nicely at the front. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'll go around the back side. 1. You can see how that groove makes it just stay right where I put it. That's really the advantage, just ease of tying. And perhaps it seats better. I don't know, maybe. So make a few wraps. And then you want to add a generous amount of glue. I use like just super glue or whatever. Put a generous amount of glue on there because, you know, bass really whack a fly pretty hard. And you're going to be throwing this on some rocky stream beds, so let's glue it down good. And then make more wraps. And as you make the wraps, you want to go as far this way as you can, and then as far that way. So you're like sheathing the lead wire in the wraps. And then when you switch sides, you do the same thing. You want to go as far this way on this side and as far that way on that side. You're just making it like a big heavy-duty thread sock. The glue and that thread, you know, the uni thread is fiber and it'll soak up the glue. So the combination of wrapping threads over glue, over threads, it just really turns into a concrete. All right, then wrap to the back. And then here's where you need your squirrel zonker. So I'm gonna cut me a fresh strip of squirrel zonker. All right, and the side that you want to start with is the side where the hairs point away. You don't want this side sticking out. You want this side because it's fluffier. And fluffy's good. So about 1 inch up, you want to pull back some fibers. Like this. All right. And we're going to cut it off. If you don't pull back the fibers when you cut it off, you cut a lot of the fibers. And then your next piece doesn't have a nice, clean, fluffy end. It's been severed. I'm going to lay it on there on a little bit of an angle. I don't want to go straight back. I want to go on an angle, so it kind of gives it that crawfish look, or just really a broader profile. And make sure it doesn't roll. You want it to be, you know, flat side down. And that one rolled a little bit, so let me try again. Okay. And pull it over to the side as you make some more wraps, you know, and get the angle that you want. Really bind it down pretty good because you don't want fish pulling it off, right? And now we're going to tie another one on. You can use just one and make it straight back, or you can use 3 or 4, whatever you want. I'm going to make another one here, only this time I'm not going to cut it off. I want to pull back these fibers, lay it on there on an angle, making sure it's flat, flat like I want it. I'm going to pull this back the way I think it should be. Tie it down good. So, I was going to make quite a few wraps here. Like I said, you don't want it coming loose. Then, pull your sonker strip back and wind your thread to the front. And you can park it right there, so it's hanging on the back side of this side. Now we're just going to wrap this around. Try to make sure that the flat side of the leather is on the shank. Then we're just going to wind this back to the back. You know, if you find that you're capturing hairs when you wrap it, you can just use a tool to pull some of those fibers back and make sure you're not grabbing those fibers. And then when you get up here somewhere, pretty close to the shank, stop by going between the two, and then wrap this thread Try not to capture a lot of the hairs if you can avoid it. This seems to help doing that, to get between the hairs. Okay, then you cut off your excess after you've made several wraps, and I'm just going to go back to the front. And it helps to pull some of these fibers back if there's any that are up there so they don't get stuck in the glue and make it hard to tie your line on. And then just whip finish. We're going to add a little more glue. This time I'm not going to use my brush, I'm going to use my bodkin so I can put the glue right where I want it. Instead of putting it in the eye, I'm going to get it right in this crack. Right there. And then same thing on this side, you can see there's the previously glued threads. Here's my new threads. There you go. All right, and there you have it. Poof. Lands in the water like that. These things are all up and fluffy and crazy looking. There you go. They'll point in all different directions, but when they're in the water, they'll be nice and buoyant and sit just like that, and it'll entice those bass like nothing else on a hot summer day. Thanks for watching.